Welcome to the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast, hosted by your favourite duo, Stephen and Charlene. They're here to help you transform your mindset and create a positive outlook on life. Are you tired of feeling stuck and unfulfilled? Are you ready to take control of your thoughts and emotions and rewrite your story? Well, you're in the right place. They will be sharing inspiring stories, practical tips, and expert advice to help you on your journey to a better you. You'll learn how to let go of negative self-talk, embrace your strengths, and focus on the good things in life. Each episode will be joined by amazing guests who have rewritten their own life stories and are now living their best lives. From successful entrepreneurs to accomplished athletes, we'll bring you stories of resilience, courage, and triumph. So grab a cup of coffee, get cozy, and get ready to be inspired. Tune in every week for a new episode of the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast. Let's rewrite our stories together and make every day count.
In today's episode, meet Jason, a decorated combat veteran with multiple deployments. Lieutenant Colonel Jason G. Pike, USA retired, served 31 years in the United States Army as both an enlisted and officer, including 9 years overseas in 5 countries. Jason earned over 30 service awards and badges and survived a wicked amount of military training. Join us as we delve into his story.
Before we get started, we want to remind you that the information presented in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are their own and do not represent the views of any organisation or entity. Additionally, any information presented should not be taken as legal, medical, or financial advice. Always consult with a licensed professional in the respective field for any advice or guidance. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's dive into today's topic and learn how to transform our lives through positive thinking and taking control of our stories. Thanks for joining us.
Before we begin, we want to give you a heads up. We may be discussing some sensitive and personal topics that might bring up some strong emotions or discomfort. Our goal is to create a safe and supportive space, but we know that everyone's experiences and triggers are different. If you start feeling overwhelmed or triggered during an episode, remember to prioritize your well-being. It's totally okay to hit pause and take a breath. Your self-care is important, and looking after your mental and emotional health should always come first. If you ever need extra support, we encourage you to reach out to a mental health professional or someone you trust. You're not alone, and there are resources available to help you on your personal journey. Thank you for joining us on this incredible ride with the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast. Together we'll navigate life's challenges and rewrite our narratives with strength and resilience.
Hey everyone, it's Stephen and Charlene from the Rewrite Your Life Story podcast, and today we're really excited. We have Jason Pike all the way from San Antonio, Texas. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Stephen, Charlene, great to be here. Thank you for asking me to come on the show.
It's good to have you, Jason. You have such a vast range of experience, and you have traveled the world as a soldier, and we're really excited. And you've written books now as well that are helping others, 2 books. So we're really excited to learn more about your journey and how it all began. So take us right from the beginning.
Yeah. So I grew up in the state of Georgia in the United States and South Carolina, where it's from the southern part. So I got a little bit of a different accent. Some people call me redneck, but that's fun. But no, I was from a different area, and I grew up in the countryside. Really struck my parents really hard when I was young is that I was identified as a disabled learner or a very slow processor of information, and I still am. It was in 1972. I failed the first grade. Reading and writing are my worst subjects. Still are today, even though I'm a best-selling author, but you can figure that one out yourself. But no, really, that was just difficulty. And they took me to university to do all these tests and studies, and I was way below processing ability. I don't know that they didn't have a title. The term was dyslexia, but the bottom line was I was a very slow processor and I was way behind. Even though I tried, I always tried. My dad always told me to keep trying, and I did, but I just couldn't get it. And I basically passed through academics, very mediocre. I have 3 college degrees, 2 masters and 1 bachelor's, but I was nothing like college bound or college material at all throughout those years at all. There was no expectations at all on me that I was even going to go to a college or even to be successful in any type of profession just because of my ability to process information. That's how it started in the beginning. And the academics were really, and they still are, my biggest challenge over time.
Tell us a little bit about you joining the army and that journey.
Yeah. So my high school counselor says, don't even go to college. Don't. I mean, think of your counselor telling you not to go to college. And there was logic behind it on the scores and everything else. So where I came from, it was either you're going into the military, you're going to college. Well, not going to college. I might as well go to the military. I joined the Army National Guard. It was a reserve force when I was 17 years old. I was still in high school because I was older because I had failed a grade. And so I went in about between my junior and senior year of high school, come out. I went through 3 months of training, come out, and I was totally changed. I went to hell and back, and the hell was going to basic training for me. I mean, drinking water out of the fire hose, all that information, going from a civilian to a soldier was just a life-changing event. And I come back in the 12th grade. I thought at that time, at that young age of 18, I was a newly formed 18-year-old when I was a soldier. I said, well, you know what? I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew that I was going to go to college somehow, because if I went through all this, I definitely can do some other things. I don't know how I'm going to do it though, but I knew that I could do much more because I'd kind of been to that point of no return and then come back from the dead or from hell. And I said, well, I think I can do some things better. And then I started to think about becoming a leader in the military. I joined. Everything was at the bottom. I mean, not only in education, but in rank. I started at the bottom, enlisted. And so I eventually went to a junior college where they don't care about your grades or your scores or anything, and to build on my basics and then transfer into a university. So to become a leader in the military, or a lot of times a leader, you have to have some sort of a college education of some sorts. And that's kind of where I led my way very slowly and methodically. It wasn't in engineering. It was in something easy like education, but whatever it took to get the degrees and to get the certificates, the piece of paper that says you're educated, that's kind of what I went for. And I stayed in the reserves and I eventually went on to active duty, which is the full-time service.
Awesome. And I just love that persistence and that resilience to keep on going. You went then into active duty. Tell us a little bit about the tours you've done and a little bit about that and what that service and how it actually shaped you as an individual.
Yeah, so 31 years of service, and 9 years of that was overseas in 5 different countries. You're looking at South Korea, Germany, Afghanistan. That's the war zone. I had 2 tours in El Salvador and one other, Canada. And then there's other ones that you just can't talk about. But many of the years of my military service being overseas, not staying at the Marriott at a hotel, being out there with the locals and eating their food, using the bathroom where they use it, living out there with them. To me, that was much better experience than my college, all my degrees. So I would never take that away. And it formed me, became very more cosmopolitan or worldly, understanding cultures and foods and things of that nature. And I talk about it a lot. So that was a big life changer for me as far as just understanding the world a little bit. And I really enjoyed that part of it. A Soldier Against All Odds, that's the blue book. And this is where I vomit. I vomit out my story. All the good, the bad, and the ugly are in here. And so when I saw that thing written out of the good, the bad, that nearly being kicked out and all those things, it really is like, wow, how in the world did I make it? That's the question a lot of people ask. Why did you write this book? Why did you put this stuff out here on this stuff? Well, everybody was asking me, and I was not a dumbass like you do all of this. But it's not just getting the education, but going up into the ranks and also hitting the bottoms and then getting out of the bottoms. I've literally almost drowned in shit. That's a famous story. But no, it was just a roller coaster ride. At the time, my mother was hearing me going through all these things. And he's like, why can't you just be normal like everyone else? I can only be me, Mom. That's all I know how to be. And I knew I had a story years ago. I wanted to get out of the military for a period of time before I put it on paper.
I love that. So it sounds like you've got a really raw retelling of everything that you've gone through, which is really beautiful because there's so much richness there.
I'm a very curious person and I want to know how you nearly drowned in shit.
So yeah, that was in South Korea. I was walking along at night doing a training exercise. One of the skills of a soldier is to be able to read a military map and a compass, walk through the woods and find points, find yourself if you're lost or you want to find a way to go through the woods from point A to point B. It was exercise. And so I was walking alone at night with my equipment. I had my rifle, I had my equipment on and finding my points, and I could smell it. I could smell feces. This is considered fertilizer in South Korea on a rice paddy. And I needed to cross over it. So I stayed away from the ditch. It was at night. We cannot use flashlights because this is a military exercise and we're doing military training. Well, the shit is slippery. I slipped on my butt and I went into the embankment into a ditch. I went neck deep into feces, shit. And we've all heard the term in America, we call it up the creek without a paddle or you're neck deep in shit and things of that nature. But I was there and I was alone and it was at night. I've never had a family. There's so many things I haven't done. I don't have any children. I don't have, oh my God. And this is not the way to go. I mean, to drown in shit. And it was like a quicksand type of material, a combination of feces and solid together. It went straight through, permeated me through. And I did a caterpillar movement and I got up on top of it. And I very slowly, methodically crawled my way out, making sure I didn't sink down. Once I got out, I got on my back, looked up at the stars and said, God, why did you put me in this shit? And I was a mob of it at that time. And then I was facing another problem, which was there was other people out there finding their point. I wanted to save my face. I didn't want anyone to know about it. So because my last name is Pike and they might call me Poopin' Pike and that might be a legend. I might become a legend of someone that poop fell in the poop. So I want to keep it a secret. So we're not supposed to talk to the Koreans, the locals out there, but I needed help. And I didn't want to talk to the Americans. I don't speak Korean. They don't speak English, but I went to a farmhouse as a mob of shit. I went up and I knocked onto the door to the Korean family's farmhouse. And they look at me and basically with hand motioning and hand signaling, they told me to strip naked, and I did in front of strangers, and I gave them everything except my rifle, my map, and my compass. I was butt naked. What I was doing is getting help, and I always wanted to keep it a secret. And they motioned that they would clean it up for me and take it to me, which was about a mile away. I'm relying on faith and adrenaline and whatever at this point. I wasn't necessarily to speak perfect Korean or English, but they kind of knew what to do. And I walked back to camp naked, making sure no one would see me or smell me. And I got to my camp and then I slept out under the stars. I cleaned up a little bit and I wanted to keep it a secret. I slept away from everyone. That morning, she came in and delivered a fresh clothing that were not smelly at all to me. I got away. I got away with two things. I didn't drown in shit. I saved my face. I failed the course, but I was able to get it a few other times. But that's the famous, like the Poop and Pike story. But just getting out of these situations that I got myself into, I managed to skirt around things. But that's the Poop and Pike story. Yeah.
Awesome. So you've served in the military for 30 years. What made you decide to leave? Was it retirement age in the military, or was it, I've done this now, I've had my journey, now it's something new?
I was burned out. I had post-traumatic stress from many events that occurred. And finally in the shit was nothing. There was other things. And I had just accumulated a lot of stress and a lot of not expressing my emotions and going through the relief part. And so I wanted to go ahead and get out, seek medical help. That's what I did. I was burned. I couldn't do it anymore. And so I got out and retired and then sought medical help, mostly mental health counseling for the most part for a period of years, and then began to pen on paper to write this book. And that's kind of the reason I got out.
I know a lot of people in the services find it so hard to actually take that step to reach out and get that help. So what do you think would be the thing that stops them, and how could you encourage them to seek that help?
I think just leadership showing the example that they've done it before, like I've done in my book, and just saying, because a lot of times people are going to look up at the top and the other leaders if they come clean and they say, it's okay. It's okay to come and ask for help. It's okay to go to counseling or services. And I did it, and I've got some problems. If you do it that way, you're showing leading by example. And I think the first time I saw counseling I was a senior person in the military, and I was scared to do that. I was scared to go seek any type of counseling, but it's better to do that than reach a breaking point where you either get hurt or you hurt somebody else. And it doesn't have to be medical counseling. It could be a chaplain service or a spiritual help. It could be something you need to do to relieve yourself and to talk to someone, not suck it up and not try to keep it all built up inside there. And I was the best of the best at doing that. I could handle, just like I got out of shit, I could handle everything. And I did for a period of time, but you can't handle everything. And everybody's got a break point. Everybody has a point where it's too much. And at that point, when you're thinking very bad thoughts, you know what it is. It could be suicide, or it could be hurting people, or it could be hurting other things. Or when you get those and they're persistent negative thoughts, you need to do something. You need to talk to somebody. And I think just leading by example will help others to do it. And it doesn't have to be traditional. It can be there's a lot of different opportunities out there for mental health and getting help.
It's definitely an issue here in Australia, post-traumatic stress in the military, and it's the unspoken that happens. And there are cases of people taking their lives that have come out of the services. I know there's not a lot of funding in Australia where it comes to addressing these issues, especially in the services. What is it like in the States when it comes to funding and addressing these issues?
We've got a pretty healthy Veterans Administration budget that has a number of, oh my gosh, it's an entire gauntlet of different activities. It could be solo counseling one-on-one. It could be group counseling. There was just I had this cranial device they put up to me because of some depression issues I had about 2 months ago. It's some sort of it's called TMS, transcranial stimulation. I had that, but there's just so many things out there and new things coming out there. So that's a good thing. But still, even though we've got all this, there's still that stigma attached to it. And there's still people doing the unthinkable things out there. And we've been having this problem for many years. I don't know if we've got our hands wrapped around it enough.
Do you feel like there might be a situation where people will think, oh, well, no, they're in denial, or that won't happen to me? They see other people doing stuff, but so I know that won't happen to me. I'll got it all together, but they really don't on the inside.
Yeah. With the suicidal ideation thing, I think if someone has a certain type of character and they change their behavior, it could be going from happiness to sadness, but not always. It could be going from a sadness type, that's just the way they are, looking sad or depressed, to go into a happy state. If they have that sudden change of behavior that persists, there might be something there that to cue in on, but I'm not an expert, because we had in the military years ago, we had suicide training where it was mandatory to go to this to make sure that our buddies are not doing anything that is the unthinkable. But still, with all that training and with all the resources, we're still having issues with that.
So what advice would you give to people in your own squadron that you saw that were struggling?
We'll try to get the lowest people, like their immediate supervisors, to come and talk to them. Or it could be just a friend or a colleague to talk to them, gently pull them aside and maybe invite them to some activities and things. I think if the leadership of that unit or squadron, if somebody in there could say, hey, this has happened to me, or I've had these problems, regardless if you don't know who's going through it, but if one of those leaders said, hey, I've had these issues and so forth. I mean, there was a great leader that we were going through a sexual assault type of, there was a lot of sexual assault on people going on in the military. And there was a leader come out and says, I have been abused when I was a kid sexually. And by saying that in front of people, what they're doing is they're saying, hey, if it's happened, it's okay to go seek counseling. You may have a whole lot of issues, but this was a man saying that he had been abused and as a kid, and he was like a high level leader. And I think showing that it's okay to talk about it, and those people that come forward are few and far between. It takes a lot of guts to do that. But yeah, I think that's one. And whatever you can do to get to talk to these people in a gentle way without, saying there's anything wrong with them, and just saying if they need some medical help, keep the doors open for medical help if they can, and that it's okay to cry or to have emotional situations or what have you, and it's okay to go seek medical help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. Jason, I'm just wondering, all those years, how has it played out now in your daily life, all that training, all that, and what you do now?
Yeah, these takeaways are planning ahead, and planning prevents poor performance, which I write about in the book, and I still do it to this day, even though I'm retired. And I don't really have to, but I still like to do that, is look ahead at what's going to happen a week out. And I'll use the calendar, say, hey, remind me, this is my thought right now. And this is what I want to follow up on. It could be a task or an activity or things that I might want to do. These are not necessarily goals, but it's sort of a vision of where you might want to be in a few months or a few years. These are the things I want to do, and type it out there on a calendar and plan for those events or activities. And so, but no, that's what I took away, was a planner. That helped me with my disability of just processing things, because there's so much things out there and you can only take so much away from all this social media stuff going on. And just what are a few things that you might want to do in the next year or two? And then just write some things out and put it out there, and it's written down and you can see it and how you might want to approach it. That's something I took away, is planning and looking down the road a bit.
You mentioned that you've been to many different cultural experiences in your services. What would you say is the most valuable experience that has helped you in this area of life?
With the cultural experiences, really, when I went to Asia, I fell in love with Asian women. I'll tell you, and I married an Asian girl, but and I just enjoyed their foods and things of that nature. And the healthy part of the kimchi, like South Korea, and even you go into other Southeast Asian countries, and all the vegetables and the things of that nature, I eat to this day on a daily basis, more than the traditional folks who've lived in America all their lives do. That's one of the biggest takeaways. And also, everybody's fighting them. It doesn't matter if you're in this country or that country. Everybody's got their little battles going on. That's just life. It could be legal, financially. So you always want to be a little compassionate to people just because they're fighting something and you don't really know what it is, but it's just life. And we're all just in here to help each other out. Yeah.
It's like a series of hidden battles, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's a series of hidden battles. And you can learn from them. I mean, the little things that happen that, I've failed a whole lot. My book is about failure. It's about fiascos and just bizarre stuff, like falling into shit, like we talked about. There's a lot of other ones out there, but you want to try to see what you can do to learn from it a little bit, that it's okay to fail, because that's how we learn. And I think a lot of the parents out there, they want to protect their child from every little speck of danger that's out there, which it's hard to be 100% safe on everything. And it's okay to fall down and scrape yourself and maybe get pinched or stung by a bee or whatever. But these things of pain, if they're introduced earlier than later, help build resiliency and grit that will last with them over time. And they will build, just like you go to the doctor, you break your finger, whatever, the doctor says it grows back stronger. And you're thinking, it hurts too bad. It can't grow back stronger. But that's what happens even with mental resiliency as well. And so if you can sort of just allow them to, we don't want them to get hurt. We don't want our little kids to get hurt, but there is a growth process in that, So.
Awesome. Jason, in your first book, you tell about your stories and then your failures and your successes. Second part of that story is you've actually dedicated your life to help people or veterans that have left the military. And you've written a second book, Out of the Uniform, Back into Civilian Life. Tell us a bit about that journey and how you're helping veterans who have left the military.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about the Veterans Administration and the resources they've got for mental health. And a lot of people in America, so this is more of a VA, it's a Veterans Administration. It's a self-help check guide for veterans in the United States, or maybe if they're living outside, but it's for them to go through and to apply and to understand a little bit about the Veterans Administration. There's a lot of people that get out of the military and they say, yeah, I don't want to know VA. I don't want to do that because I was not combat, or I was in an air-conditioned office. I never saw anything bad. But I'm thinking there's a lot out there in the VA. It's very much highly funded. And there's a lot of resources that they just don't know. And the VA wants you to be rated. They want you to, even if you're a 0%, And the thing is, it's a seed and it grows over time because eventually we deteriorate over time. And you might not need it now, but you might need it in the future. I'm just trying to tell you that it's okay for you tough guys and girls to go and put your application in for the VA and it's health care, but it's money. But if you get very, very old, they've got VA homes. It's things, once you're in there, and there's just a whole lot of resources. There's free trips. There's free stuff. There's things to do. There's activities. We talked about counseling, but there's just so much in there. It's the largest healthcare organization the United States has. It was the VA. And there's lots of horror stories. I understand that. There are a lot of horror stories out there, but I won't get into that. But I'll just say, you don't have to just because you're in there, it doesn't mean you have to get the doctor to check you out if you don't like the doctor. I'm just saying to get in there and just check it out a little bit because it's a big multi-billion type of healthcare organization that has more than just medicine. It does have a monthly pension, depending on how you're rated, but there's just so many things out there. The reason I wrote this book is because when I was getting out, transitioning out, there was no one to help me. I tried to get some help because I didn't want to have to read all these regulations. It's crazy, but I had to because no one was going to take care of me. So I did well. I got rated pretty well at 100%. And I said, well, and I learned a lot about it by having to do it, which I didn't want to do. Once I did it, I'm thinking, I think I could write a book. Now, what my wife says, you ought to write something on it. And I said, okay, but I'm not certified. I'm just a guy that went through it. And she says, it's all right. Just go ahead and write a book on that. I think so. That's what I did to get the word out on the various services that they have out there. So that book's about, yeah.
Awesome. I just love the fact that, you're from your learning difficulties and writing 2 books. Is there a 3rd book in the process?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we got a 3rd book coming out. So the next book I've got coming out it's going to be about toxic leadership, what to do in a wicked working. Well, I'm talking about toxic. I mean, not just a bad leader, but a leader that is abusive or negligent or just wicked. And I've seen situations like that in the military. And I want to sort of approach it to say, this is what you might want to do. I had to survive some things. And I look back on it and I thought maybe I can write something for it. There's a regulation in the Army about toxic leadership. They're all regulations. So I wanted to just go about it in a more of a simplistic manner. And if you're in this wicked, wild environment, what can you do? How do you survive it? I mean, in the military, we have to stay. We have to stay in there. But in the civilian world, they can get out. But we're looking at that. It's going to take about 4 to 5 months. But that's something I wanted to get out there. Yeah.
Awesome. How did you deal with your own self-doubt in writing all these books and yourself out there?
Oh my God. On the first book, there's a testimony where I went into the hospital. I was scheduled. Am I good enough? Oh my God. And, I was like, oh shit, I'm not good enough to do this. I was comparing myself to all these other great books that are out there. I'm thinking, I don't know, man, I can't. And I was looking at my story and I developed blood clots and pneumonia, both in the legs and the lungs, but the blood clots were throughout the body. We had the obituary. I was going to die in February 2021, but the miracle or whatever, the heparin blood thinner and the biotic, they just took hold. I was in the ICU for 3 days and then they took me out and they put me into a regular, less ICU type of room. And I got out of there in another 2 days. But this book nearly killed me because I was comparing myself. I was self-doubting myself. And then I was going through all the flashbacks. I had all kinds of and I was sitting down too much and I was not exercising like I normally do. So I was just, I'm going to get this thing done. And it was like, then I went to the hospital. They've been saying, are you a smoker? No, I don't smoke. So I said, well, I've been writing a book. I've been sitting down a lot and I've been stressing. And they said, well, that might be doing it. It pulled a number on me, a big number. I had a whole lot of self-doubt and I had a whole lot of comparison and judgment of myself that I'm not good enough to do this. And I finally did it. And now I've gotten over the hill.
Yeah.
It was tough.
Yeah. Awesome. It's like you built that muscle.
Oh yeah. Now you can't get me away from these damn books.
Jason, it's been really lovely to hear your stories. And one of the things that we like to ask our guests is, what advice can you give to our listeners if they wanted to rewrite their own life story?
Wow. Yes. Try not to compare yourself or judge yourself and know that you can do it. When you rewrite your story or write any type of story, do as much as you can on your own, but also have a ghostwriter or someone more than just an editor, more of a storyteller to put it into place or to put the flow a little bit better in there. And I did that. You may have to hire one and maybe take a friend or something like that. But your story is your story. And that's what made me. And there's some things in my life I wish sometimes I could change, but there's no way. And it just, but we have some regrets sometimes, but that's just what made us who we are. But no, if you're going to rewrite that story, I would definitely get some assistance because it's emotional, very emotional. Even if you're a great writer, it's emotional and you might not write as good unless you need some help.
And if you were to go back and rewrite your own life story, now you did mention that you might have some regrets. What would it look like now if you did go back and change that?
There would only be one thing that I would like to change. But then when I look at it, I think, and there's just no way. I can only be me, and that's who I have to live with. And that's all I know how to be. And that's who I am. And that situation that occurred, that's in my book, that it was just going to happen. It did happen, and I got over it, but it was tough. You just got to accept it. As long as you're true to yourself and not try to be anybody else, just that's all you could know how to be.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Jason, thank you for sharing your story with us and being on our show today. And if you want to know more about Jason and grab his books, you can go to jasonpike.org where you can read all about Jason. And also we'll have his social media handles on the show notes so you can reach out and contact him directly and get a hold of his books. Jason, once again, thank you so much. Now that we've interviewed our guest, join Charlene and I as we recap today's episode. That was very interesting. And I think Jason has probably seen a lot.
Yes.
I just love his vulnerability around mental health concerns. And now his mission is to help other veterans and overcome. And he was quite honest when he said, even 2 months ago, he received treatment. So his honesty really played a role. And though he's been retired for a while, it still affects his daily life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love it's just so refreshingly raw and honest to the point that people anywhere can get help from that and be inspired by that realness in his stories.
One of the things that Jason said in the interview was always be a little compassionate. You don't know the little things people are going, so always show a little bit of compassion in your daily walk.
With all those hidden battles that we face.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and share it with your friends and family. Also, make sure to visit our website at www.rewriteyourlifestory.com.au to learn more about our mission, products and services. And remember, you have the power to rewrite your own life story. So go out there, face your challenges head on and create the life you've always wanted. We'll see you in the next episode.